Hello, everyone. I'm just pressing buttons. Give me 1 minute to make this work. Come on, go live. There we go. So we are live across multiple platforms today. This might be the last time I ever do multiple platforms because I'm getting rid of this software. So you're like, we're marking an occasion. Anyways, thanks for joining me, everyone. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Heidi Mavir. I'm the founder of EOTAS Matters and the author of Your Child Is Not Broken. I have been doing these interviews with professionals, parent professionals, parents, people working in the SEND space, people working in the mental health space for about 18 months, where I bring someone who I've met on my travels or basically on my computer because I don't really go anywhere, and we share with you what they're doing. So I'm speaking with Jess today, Jess from Differing Minds. Jess is a parent professional who works in helping to educate people about neurodivergence. And one of the things that she's super passionate about is educating children and young people about what that means to be in classrooms and spaces with other kids who may do things differently to what you do, from both sides of the neurodivergence divide. So we're going to talk a little bit about Jess's work today. If you're watching live, drop me a hey in the comments. If you are watching live and you can give this a share, we would love to see and hear you. We've got some people watching live on Instagram. Hello, Instagram. And we're also broadcasting onto my page and onto YouTube. So whilst I do some jiggery pokery in the background, Jess, just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got here.
Yes,
talk about that.
Will do. But before I do, just because you mentioned your book, I tell everyone when I do neurodiversity training and speaking, mostly in organisations, but I also do it in schools, universities, sports clubs, anywhere that wants me. And I always tell them that your book, Heidi, is the only book I've ever read in 24 hours. I find it really hard to read books. I have ADHD. My amazing coach, Susie Payton, taught me that you don't need to finish a book to take enjoyment from it. So I decided that was actually okay. However, your book, read it all in 24 hours. It's like the best book ever. So slight tangent, but
I'm
honestly,
glad that you said that you don't have to finish books. We launched EOTAS Matters Book Club last night, and one of the rules of EOTAS Matters Book Club is that you don't have to finish the book. So yeah,
I love it. It's such a simple thing, but I've just gone straight into it now before actually explaining to people who I am and what I do. But for me, like coaching with Susie, I did it personally. You know, obviously there's lots of coaches that are amazing, but it totally changed how I think about things. And that was one of the key examples where I was like, that's a made-up rule that everyone decided that we have to finish books, even if we don't like them, or that like it's boring, or we've already got what we need from them. Or for me, that like often I'm doing it not to even like take stuff from the book, but just to relax. So if that means I just read a few pages, like great.
Right? You can same as TV. You can start a TV series thinking, oh, this isn't really doing it for me. You can leave it. Why can't books be the
exactly
same? Yeah,
I know, exactly. So I mean, to link it slightly to what I do, I basically go and talk about that type of stuff anywhere I can. So most of my work is in other companies, and we talk a lot about these social norms and things we've like put on people, and get people to realize that we all communicate differently, process information in different ways. And yes, that comes with this sort of categorization of neurodivergent and neurotypical, but really we're just all different. And I want to get to a time where we don't necessarily need that divide. I think it's really useful right now, don't get me wrong, because no one's thought about neurodivergence and how to really support people. But yeah, that's what I do. And I do it in, I like to think, a fun, engaging, non-boring way, because I couldn't sit through really boring training and talks and things like that. So trying to make it interesting and not talk at people for a really long time.
And how did you get into that? Like, what's your background before that?
So I went on the sort of very typical journey in our world, which is have children, one of them, maybe both of them being neurodivergent, and then going on my own journey of self-discovery. So I'm like one of those parent carers. And I couldn't believe how little I knew about it. And I thought I grew up and I live in Brighton, and I thought I was like really inclusive and like I got all of like diversity, and I'd worked in the private sector my whole career until that point. And I'd always done like inclusion projects on the side, or like I'd, started some ERGs and things like that, because that was really where my interest was. But then when I had this realization after having my kids, I was like, I know nothing about neurodiversity. Candidly, I've barely even talked about disability. It just wasn't on the inclusion agenda in all of the organizations. When we were talking about inclusion, we were talking about gender and race, and if we were lucky, the LGBTQ plus community. But that's like where it stopped. And I just thought, wow, if someone like me who thinks they're inclusive and whose heart is in the right place can be this ignorant, then like so many people are, through almost no fault of their own. So yeah, I decided that like to be done with my career, and well, weirdly, we're going into the full story. It was during COVID, and I decided that was going to be, like many of us, like a turning point. I was like, right, I'm doing something different. I want something with purpose in my life. And I actually applied to do a master's in sustainable development. So I started that because I'm really into like sustainability and the environment. I started that and I went all in. This is before I knew I had ADHD. I went all in alongside working part-time for a tech company.
The signs were there, Jess.
There were many. There were many.
I'll do a master's.
And I loved it. I really loved it. And I did it for 8 months. And then I totally burnt out. And I was like, wow, this is just too much. So I thought I'd take a break, because on my course you could. And I was like, I'll go back in a few months' time where I've like kind of calmed myself down and figured out what I want to do. And then I think about 2 weeks later, I went on like a spa break with my partner as part of this relaxation. And in that spa break is when Differing Minds was born. So I came back, threw myself into that, and then never went back to uni. And so here we are, because that just became like yet another one of my interests, but like one that isn't going anywhere because it's so personal. So yeah, that's basically how I ended up here.
I feel like as ADHD adults, we kind of do that thing where we have like intense passions and we attach ourselves to things, sometimes for long periods of time. And then we land on the thing. And then that's like, oh, that's not going anywhere. This is what I do now. And sometimes the other things come along and they stay for a bit, and they might stay for a long time, or they might even always be a hobby or a pastime. But once we find the thing, we're like, suckered onto it like an octopus. And like there is like the antithesis of ADHD, because we get this thing that just we envelop and it becomes part of us, and it's just not going anywhere. I feel like that about the work that I do. Like I've had lots of different careers. I always had a bit of a mix and match career. So
I totally relate to that. And I think like also for me, I always wanted to run my own business, but I never knew what I wanted to do. So I feel like because now the thing I love is also my thing, and I almost have full control over it, and I can see the impact it's making to the people we're trying to support, but also to me and my family directly. It's not going anywhere for me. And I'm the same as you. I had quite a varied career. It was always in the private sector, but I did lots of different roles. And it was always after about 2.5 years that I decided I wanted to do something different, and I moved on. And when I reached that point with Differing Minds, I was like, right, I need to do something. I still want to do Differing Minds in its current context, but I kind of want to do something more. So I wanted to take the ideas of neuroinclusion, but that apply to everybody, because as we know, like so much of that applies to everyone. And for me, it's like this deep self-understanding that's really helped me figure out what success looks like in my life and be comfortable with who I am and blah, blah, blah. And I just thought that works for everyone. So a few months ago, I was like, right, I'm going to make this a thing, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this. But actually, I've just wound back to neurodiversity because I care so much about it, and the work is certainly not done, that I don't need the change that I thought I needed. I still talk about that stuff, but I think neurodiversity is just such a big topic for me, and it's so deeply personal on so many levels. And we are living in the current state of the world, so we realize that there is so much to still do, and I just want to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that I've done this for 5 years now. Like my marriage didn't even last that long. Like I did have another longer relationship, but this is like the biggest thing I've been, apart from my child and pets, this is the biggest commitment I've ever managed to maintain. And and 5 years has gone in a heartbeat, right? And I know that we've done a lot. Like when I say we, I mean the EOTAS Matters community. We've done a lot. But the reason I think why this work appeals to me, and you might be able to relate to this, is that because there is so much work to do, there is so much opportunity, and you have so many avenues, and there's always the opportunity for something new, exciting, and that feeds my ADHD motor like mad. Like the challenge is, like, just because you could do it doesn't mean that you should do it. Do you know what I mean?
That is everything.
And like there's maintaining that novelty, which when you're an ADHD business owner is so important. Like I think that the best approach for me as an ADHD adult, I'm autistic and ADHD, but like ADHD generally tends to be, well, autism is in the driving seat of my identity, but ADHD is in the boot, lobbing stuff out onto the motorway. So I feel like I sometimes have to take a bit of time to put ADHD in the passenger seat and like say, don't touch the radio, but you need to be looking where we're going. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like I need to constantly be feeding that dopamine seeking part of my brain to keep it fresh, to keep it novel. Otherwise, I have no motivation at all.
Definitely.
At all.
Like, like that's so true for me, because there's having like a deep special focus, whatever you want to call it, interest in something, but it needs to be alongside like the dopamine stuff too. And I could not relate to you more when you say like, just because something's like a good idea or it should happen doesn't mean you need to be the person that does it, because that's what I'm very lucky. It's weird. I'm diagnosed ADHD, but when I did my assessment, they said I score very highly for autistic traits, but I've just never really done anything with it. And like, you know, if I'm autistic, cool. If I'm not, cool. Like I don't really, but I have a partner, both business and in life, who is just very different to me, certainly the ADHD part. And I'm very lucky. He keeps me like on the straight and narrow, because he's like, these are all great ideas, Jess, but we do not have the time for all of them. So what's the one that you want to do? Or, you know, where are we going to focus this year? Maybe let's put those on pause. And just a total classic is I also am really interested in sports, specifically netball. So like I play netball. It's helped me a lot in my life, and I want to get my kids into it. And I found that there are a lot of sports clubs that just aren't inclusive. And that don't understand particularly my eldest's needs, and it can put her off very quickly, which is a shame because it's one of her strengths. Like she's super talented, but when her confidence isn't there, you don't see her talent, because it's just, the fear has taken over. And also around our area, there isn't a netball club for very young children. It starts at like 10 years old. So in December, I was like, well, I'm just going to start a netball club. And
love it.
Yeah. So I said to my husband, like, it's just going to be something really cash, like an hour on a Sunday morning, couple of kids, just need to cover the cost of the courts, you know, we'll just have a bit of fun.
Let me guess, we're trialing for the Olympics, yeah?
All the kids are on the pathway to being England netball players. It's just very popular. Like netball's quite a big thing for a lot of like women. And when you're into netball, you're like, a lot of people are really into netball. So there's loads of mums that are like, oh my God, yeah, like loads of them are like, can I get my 4-year-old involved? I'm like, oh, it's kind of starting at 5, but okay, sure. And it's just spiraled. But I love it, and it keeps me really energized. And
I bet netball with 5-year-olds is absolute carnage.
It's hilarious.
Amazing.
And honestly, like, I don't know, I'm not a qualified coach. Like I want to do that qualification when I've got some time and money. But I've just learned, like, I've just figured out like what I would want as a 5 to 8-year-old. It's amazing what TikTok and YouTube can teach you as well. And the kids love it. And also what's amazing is like, I send out to any kid or grown up that wants their child to join. a really simple list of questions, like the basic stuff that you need, like what's their name, what's the date of birth, blah, blah, blah. And then there's another list at the bottom that says, if any of these are relevant, could you let me know? And it says, does your child have any additional needs, disabilities, send, whatever you want to term it? Do they have any sensory triggers? Is there just any general information you want to share that's going to help me to coach them? These questions don't get asked by sports clubs at all. And the information that I've got on these kids is amazing, because it's not all about like disabilities and additional needs. Some of the time, the parents will be like, oh, I'm really pleased you've asked. They're actually really shy, and it would be better if they watch something before they get involved. Or actually, they need a lot of positive encouragement. So if they're standing on the sideline, really bring them in. Another one was like, oh, they respond really well to like having a role, a job. So maybe get them to do some tidying up with you. And I'm like, this is why neuroinclusion is so good, because you're trying to cater for neurodivergent children. And as we know, you then end up supporting like all of the kids and adults.
100%. I feel like this is I know this isn't what you're really passionate about. I feel like this is one of the things that wouldn't cost anything, like to put in schools. Like this notion that, I know that we talk a lot about quality first teaching and child-centered learning, but like you've got to understand that in that classroom of 30 children, you've got 30 different personalities, preferences, sensory systems, levels of self-esteem, like levels of understanding, levels of ability. And you need to know all of that to be able to teach them. Like, especially if your teaching style is from the front, you've got to know how to differentiate for all those kids. And I feel like as neurodivergent parents, we know that about our children because we've had to advocate hard for that. But that needs to spill over, because our children are not aliens, they're human beings. And the reason we've had to do that is because they're in systems that are not set up for children and young people who don't go by the majority rule, right? But the fact is, in a classroom of 30 kids, you've got 30 different sets of needs. Just because they're not challenging or they're not like more different than the majority, that does not mean you've not got 30 different sets of needs. And that's such a miss. Like and that is what I think about, like I bang on about this all the time. And when we were trying to advocate for, when we were advocating for my son and we were getting his EHCP ready for college, for post-16 college, and we were talking about accommodations that he needed. And one of the things that he definitely needs is to be able to get up and what we call shake his bum, but a movement break, right? So like, we will just be like, if we're sat, I'll be like, come on, let's shake our bums, But, basically it's like that, to kind of keep your central nervous system activated and to stay regulated. And the person was like, oh, well, I'm not really sure how we do that. And then one of the other people in the meeting was like, well, we could just do that for everyone. We could just say every 20 minutes, who needs to shake their bum? Most of them would benefit from that. We'll do that.
Yeah. Like, if they don't want to, they don't have to. It's revolutionary, isn't it?
It's not enforced bum shaking. But, there's, for most of us, if we've been sat concentrating on something for more than half an hour, moving our bodies will help us.
Exactly. I totally agree. And we do some training for teachers, but we also, like, what my personal passion is teaching all children about neurodiversity and normalizing the difference from a really early age, because kids spot it. So call it what it is and allow them to understand it. But when we go and talk to teachers about it, they get so worried. They're like, I know I've got all these different needs, but I can't handle it. Like, there's too much to think about. You're going to open up this can of worms. And I'm like, it's not that hard. Like, from exactly what you've just said, there's some things that are going to benefit everybody. And also, even if it is hard, is that a reason for us not to do it? Like, at least you're probably not, let's be realistic. And this is what I tell organizations, you're not going to be able to cater for everybody's needs 100% of the time. Like, no. I'm not living in some ridiculous world where I think that's possible, but it's not a reason not to even try and not to ask, and not to understand these kids and these people. And what I find amazing about like teaching children about neurodiversity. So we've done it a lot around Brighton and Hove. And for anyone watching, we have a free series of videos which make up a whole lesson that any teacher can use, any family can use if it's helpful, on our website, which is just a lesson that really gets children to understand the difference between equity and equality. And one of the things that we do is we get them to look at some fidget toys, focus tools, whatever you want to call them, and like talk about like whether all children need them or not. Because one of the the things teachers think is, oh, we can't put these toys or these things in our classrooms because then everyone's going to want one and everyone's going to be distracted. And like, honestly, I work with 8 to 11-year-olds when we teach this lesson. And in almost every lesson, when you ask the question, do all children need these? At least one child will put their hand up and say, well, I don't need it because if I was using it, it would distract me from what the teacher's saying because I wouldn't be able to concentrate on that. But here's my friend, whoever, and they're autistic and they do need it. And so if they weren't doing that, then they wouldn't be able to concentrate. And I'm like, if these 8-year-olds can get it, like, why can we not get it as grown-ups? And they're just amazing. And it's why I feel like the neurodiversity movement is amazing. Like, it's really good. It's gaining a lot of momentum, but we are constantly going to be fighting a losing battle if we don't teach children. Like, I can teach adults all day long, like I can, and I can make them reframe their thinking. Loads of us can do that. But what is the point in getting them to reframe their thinking? Well, let's just get the kids in the first place to understand we're all different and that's okay.
Yeah. And we've seen that, I think, we're seeing that in other areas of marginalization. So, you know, if we think about gender presentation or LGBTQIA young people, I feel like our generation of kids, they've got that down.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's no reason why we can't follow that model for other marginalizations. And I'm not saying it's dead simple. It's not a magic wand. And, oh, look, all of a sudden, everyone has access to all the right things all the time. It's not that.
Yeah.
But I do think that this generation of kids has shown us that actually it's not that hard to get your head around this stuff. No. It's us and all of our internalized bullshit making it more complicated than it needs to be. 100%. I think the thing about the fidget toys I think is so interesting. Like, I've been in environments where there's been fidget toys in the middle of the table. The kids who don't need them very quickly abandon them. There's a bit of novelty to start off with, and then they realize they've not caught up. They get asked a question, they feel stupid, so they throw it on the table and they don't touch it again. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's about giving our children that autonomy as well and being able to make those decisions for themselves and trusting them. Like that mindset of, oh, kids can't be trusted, they'll run amok, it'll be like Lord of the Flies. Do you know what I mean? It's like Lord of the Flies is a work of fiction.
Exactly.
And I also think the thing about I think a really nice analogy for it is lifts, you know, elevators. So most buildings, all new buildings, but most public access buildings, unless they're like Victorian Manors or whatever, have lifts. Not everyone needs to use a lift.
No.
But people who are able-bodied without mobility issues on a day when they think, do you know what, I'm going to use the lift. And they can, and that's fine. And they benefit from an accommodation for people who have mobility differences who need a lift all the time. And when they see someone who clearly needs the lift, they'll go, I'll be all right, I'll take the stairs. That's what that looks like, being a decent human being to other people.
100%.
We don't say, oh, we shouldn't put lifts in tall buildings. Oh, we know it. Everyone will
imagine the carnage.
You know what I mean? It'll be madness. There'll be people wanting to use the lift. The stairs won't get used. You know what I mean?
Honestly, it's so true. And like, I just feel when you teach children, it's amazing because not only do you like realize how much children get this stuff and they don't care, exactly like you said, but I've seen these kids, especially autistic children, because it's like, I don't want to put a hierarchy on it, but there is a lot of like stigma associated with being autistic compared maybe to some of the other differences.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen them go from a kid who doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to like accept that's who they are, to like talking about it to their class and being proud of it and like making presentations about like who they are and like their identity. And like, you can't do that. And you can, if you're just doing it with that child, it can mean something to them, but they'll still keep it hidden.
And it's still really othering, isn't it? It's still very let's go over here and talk very quietly about your disability.
Exactly. Oh yeah, and if you need something, then just give us this little like slip. And sometimes that works for children, but if it's working for children, it means you haven't invested in creating a culture in the schools where they're okay to like be who they are. And there's a lot of work to be done. It doesn't happen overnight, because there's still all of this stuff that exists outside of the classroom. They might be living in families who don't understand, like there might be like cultural impacts for them and all of this type of stuff. But we have to start in schools, because otherwise, we're just going to be on the back foot forever.
I agree. The work you're doing is so good. So if people come to your website, what kind of stuff can they find there? What, like you've mentioned, you've got some free videos that can kind of be used with any children and young people. What else will they find on your website?
So just more information about what we do. So on our website, it will show you the stuff that we do in organisations, which is training within organisations, and we also have a centralised programme where you can come on and train to be a neurodiversity champion. It's called the Neuronavigator programme, and then it's got the stuff we do in schools as well, so you can sign up to access the free videos and lessons all about teaching our children and young people about neurodiversity.
And if people have a 5-year-old who wants to play netball, where in the country are you?
Brighton.
Brighton. Okay, amazing. Okay, amazing. Oh, please go and find Jess and Differing Minds. The work they do is so important. And those freebies, that video that you can get hold of, I think is valuable for anybody. And I think it's one of those things that sometimes we just need those sort of like low-hanging fruit things. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way at all, Jess, where it's something that's really tangible and easily digestible that we can use, that we can then let everyone else have access to. And I think that's how that will work. And, I genuinely believe that people don't want to be like non-inclusive, but people are frightened of getting it wrong, and of like, people are frightened of disability. People are frightened of neurodivergence. And the reason for that is because they just haven't had the opportunity to learn about it. So the more people doing the kind of work that you do, the better, because you don't know what you don't know, right? We didn't know what we didn't know until
I was ignorant. Like, I always say to people, own your ignorance. Say like, I care about this stuff. I want to learn. Who's going to help me learn? Yes.
Helen's saying, just agreeing with the, if we let one have it, they'll all want it. And she's like, yes, and fidget toys got banned for all children in the primary because too many were using them. I mean, there's information in that, right? There's information in that.
But this is what frustrates me. How can the problem be that they're using them? What was the actual problem that you saw? If it was just that they were using them, that's not a problem.
No. For anyone who's interested as well, I know this is about you, Jess, but it is worth mentioning that in our Marble Run, which is our neurodivergent membership for parents and carers, we've got an amazing training from Tom McFadden, who's a disability trainer, on writing access riders for reasonable adjustments for your children and young people, which is a cracking piece of training. So after you've gone and had a look at Jess's website, go and have a look at mine and get signed up for the Marble Run. But thank you for being with us today, Jess. I'm so pleased we made this happen. And what are you doing for the rest of the week? Have you got anything exciting happening next week? It's Friday, isn't it?
Next week. I know. Well, at the moment, I'm just planning for the weekend. We're one of these families where the weekend is like, let's brace ourselves. I have high energy, high needs, activity-driven kids. So that's what I've got on the cards. And then I'll rest next week at work.
Nice. I'm the other way around. I'm going to put my pajamas on at around 4 p.m. this afternoon. And I won't have pajamas or a bra on until Monday morning.
I love it.
All right, my love. Thank you for joining me. Stay with me. We'll say goodbye off screen. But thanks to everyone for being with us. And do share this video. And we'll see you all soon.